to fill the aircraft gap for Britain. In October of 2009, British Airways launched a unique route titled Club World London City, offering a business class only configuration of the Airbus A318. While the service is certainly unique, it isn't flawless. Due to aircraft range limitations and in order to land as a domestic flight in New York, the aircraft touches down not long after departure from London City in Shannon Island, clears US Customs, fills up its fuel tank and then departs once again. Given that few customers have lined up to order the Airbus A318 since its introduction and there have been no deliveries made since 2013, it has become a unique opportunity to fill the aircraft gap for British Airways' service. Showing off one aircraft, the Bombardier CS100 could certainly help serve this unique route for several reasons. One reason is the completed testing in London. Canadian aircraft manufacturer Bombardier has successfully completed their first non-stop transatlantic flight with the CS100, which was released last year. The aircraft had been at London City Airport conducting steep approaches in order to get its steep approach certification from Transport Canada and EASA. The test flights were successful and the company is expecting to receive this new certification in the second quarter of the year. Bombardier already has extensive experience operating into London City Airport, which is a common place to spot the company's Q400 dual turboprop aircraft, as well as the Challenger 650 and Global 5000 and 6000 business jets. Another reason would be through the presence of Titan Airways. British Airways originally operated the Club World London City service on a twice daily basis, but as time has gone on and demand has weakened, British Airways opted to reduce service down to just one flight per day. Since reducing service, British Airways also leased one of its A318s to Titan, who will be operating the aircraft for 2 years with an option to buy at the end, and will be keeping the all-premium 32-seat aircraft for the first 7 to 9 months until the aircraft is reconfigured into a 112-seater economy-only layout. Titan had approached British Airways after they had elected to reduce the service to one flight, inquiring on whether or not there would be a potential wind-down. With no official comment from the airline or its owner IAG in regards to the future of the service and the aircraft, it is all just speculation and opinions at this time. In opinion, we are likely to see British Airways opt for the CS100 in the future, as it will allow them to remain more competitive for this route, as while they are currently the only airline that operates the London City Airport to New York route, this will soon change. An airline called Odyssey Airlines has already confirmed the order for the CS100 and is currently advertising direct flights from London City to New York, which are due to begin this year. A final reason would be the comparison between a new aircraft versus dropped route perspective. With the CS100 having the ability to carry an all-premium cabin layout of 40 seats, it would be a unique opportunity for British Airways to have it replace the Airbus A318-100 that currently operates the London City to New York route. While the A318 does not have the range to make the flight directly with its stop at Shannon Airport in Ireland, the CS100 will be able to land in New York without stopping, assuming it can find a way to have its passengers clear customs in the UK or just in the United States, as most international flights do. With the CS100 offering 8 more seats than the A318, it is unlikely that this aircraft has a long future left ahead of it for this route. With Britain leaving the European Union, avoiding the stop at Shannon is something that British Airways may opt to do. As with the free movement of people potentially becoming a thing of the past, the passenger would not only need to clear the US immigration stands, but would also now need to clear the EU immigration checks. All in all, British Airways would not appear to have much in the way of a choice with their aircraft selection. However, the CS100 has marked a new moment for all premium transatlantic flights and could serve the airline well if it continues to offer its unique service from London City to New York.
Charlie Yankee, backtrack, vacate.
And here we go.
This show is brought to you by airlinegeeks.com.
Hello and welcome aboard. As we prepare for departure, we ask that you pay close attention to the following important information.
American 1027 is on the visual.
American 1027 on to tower, wind 250 at 17, gust 23, flying an Airbus 3 mile final, runway 18 right, clear to land.
Clear to land 18 right, American 1027.
Coming to you live from anywhere and everywhere, ladies and gentlemen and av geeks alike. We'd like to welcome you to Inside the Airlines, a podcast. My name is Tyler. I'm a 6-year airline employee with experience in everything from baggage handling, customer service ticketing agent, and flight attendant.
And I'm Ryan, president and founder here at airlinegeeks.com, bringing you the latest and greatest in everything airline industry related.
And my name is Parker, and I'm a senior writer at airlinegeeks.com. I've been writing for the site since last August and have been doing aviation photography for the last 2 years.
And this evening, folks, we'll be bringing you a lot of fun stuff, a lot of good stories, scoop, and a really cool interview. Our focus tonight, though, is on the regional carriers, something that I kind of hold near to my heart, and I think it's a really cool thing to talk about because they're kind of at, I would argue, the core of some of these major airlines. So definitely a good conversation piece. We have an interview with the pilot coming up for you. But before we get there, how are you guys doing this evening?
All right. Yeah, everybody doing good? Cool.
Yeah.
What's going on, guys? You guys having fun tonight?
Yeah. You know, it's a good way to kick off an evening at 9:30 p.m. local time.
You know what?
A lot of fun, and I really, really like regional carriers, so I'm so excited for tonight.
This-
And I know I'm like one of the rare people to say that, Tyler, but I love regional carriers because they really are a stepping stone for bigger and bigger dreams for a lot of people. And so for some, I mean, if they get to become a pilot, they're happy. So I love regional carriers. I can't wait to talk about it.
To be honest, tonight is a lot better than Game of Thrones. For all the people that are skipping our podcast to watch Game of Thrones, you know what?
Shameful.
It's shameful. It's terrible, to be honest. But hey, we still love you. You can check out our podcast on iTunes. Make sure to like, rate, comment, and subscribe. We'll also be on YouTube at Inside the Airlines. But make sure you check us out on iTunes. Give us a subscribe or whatever else you get your podcast feed from. We'll be happy to do that. Of course, everything that you're listening to tonight is brought to you by airlinegeeks.com. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for skipping Game of Thrones or whatever else is going on. I think Megyn Kelly was doing an airline special tonight, right?
Actually, she was doing. I watched the show before we got started, and last week they advertised that they're going to have a story on airlines on their show, the Sunday Night with Megyn Kelly on NBC.
Sure.
I guess they didn't air it tonight, so
Bummer. Yeah, we'll have to check to see when that is, but we'll definitely get to that. But we do have some awesome stories tonight, some news stories, some headlines, some things that are trending in the airline world. And this of course is what's trending in the airline world. First of all, as a flight attendant, not too happy with the CEO of Qatar. Have you heard about this one, guys?
Yes, sir.
So, of course, I'm sure if you haven't heard about it by now, you've probably been living under an airline rock. But CEO of Qatar comes out and he calls the American carriers crap. And he says that everybody who is cabin crew on these American carriers are grandmas. As a 24, 25-year-old young man, I can tell you right now I am not a grandma. But you know what? Hold on one second. Before we talk about it, let's listen to this clip. Here's Akbar Al-Baker. Here's what he said about American carriers. Audio's not that great. It was off of a cell phone microphone, so sorry about that.
Wide seats, plenty of legroom, as well as award-winning service from an international cabin crew. By the way, the average age of my cabin crew is only 26
So he's boasting. He's saying they're only 26, his average age of his cabin crew.
years. So there is no need for you to travel on this crap American carriers.
What? This guy says we're crap. Okay, let's keep listening. Yeah, laugh it up, buddy. Laugh it up.
By
What? He called me a grandma. So I got to ask you guys, though. Come on, though, for real. What are your real thoughts on this?
Parker, go ahead. I've been talking enough.
I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, just ignoring the fact that he's just wrong to start with. I mean, you can say so much about that, whether or not it's sexist or whatever it might be. I mean, is it really that great to have cabin crew that are, whose average age is 26? I mean, come on.
Yeah, that makes you wonder. I mean, there is a point, and I think what he was saying is obviously not right. What he's saying, but it's interesting that he would say that. I mean, has he been flying the U.S. Airlines recently? And then if there's such crap, then why is he investing a 10% stake into American?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this guy. Obviously, American Airlines came out with a really strong statement against this and said, that these aren't grandmothers serving you, and even if they are, they're the best grandmothers and doing an amazing job and things like that. So we appreciate the American carriers standing up for flight attendants throughout the business, but I really don't want to spend too much time with this guy. I've only got one thing to say to him. That's it, man. Get out of here. We don't want your money. Get out of here. I mean, really, this guy cannot be. He's not serious.
Surely you can't be serious.
So anyways, so good for him. We'll move on to the...
Hey, don't call me Shirley.
Yeah, what's that in the background there?
What's that?
I am serious.
Your little background soundtrack there.
Yeah, don't worry about it. So let's move on to the next story. This one's a little more somber. This one's a little more sad here.
Not really good music for...
A New Zealand woman has
sad.
been killed from the blast of a plane taking off at an airport on the Caribbean island of St Martin. The 57-year-old tourist was at a popular viewing point where the takeoff and landing of planes is a tourist attraction. The woman was blown off her feet and hit her head. She's said to have died from her injuries a short time later. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade is investigating the reports.
Well, first of all, this is tragic. We're sending our thoughts and our prayers to the woman who passed away on St. Martin Beach. But, I mean, first of all, I don't think this is the first time, is it?
Yeah, it is the first time I think somebody has died because of their injuries.
Sure. So a lot of people have been injured, obviously, on St. Martin Beach, Maho Beach, in St. Martin. And, I hate to say it. I really, really do. But is it, was it bound to happen? Probably. You've got people that are hanging on a fence, getting blown back for fun, and they really don't. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tyler. No, go ahead, Tyler. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying this is. I was going to say exactly what you're going to say, and this is not. Jet blast is a serious thing.
Oh yeah, jet blast can turn over anything from a person to a vehicle easily. I mean, we had a video the other day we put in our article of a 747 blowing over a semi or a bigger truck at full throttle, or even not even normal takeoff thrust. I mean, it can easily blow down something. I mean, if you ever walk behind an aircraft just on the ramp while it's pulling off, it still will blow you pretty good. I couldn't imagine what that's like when you're getting hit with sand and stuff. That really does get you thinking, and it was bound to happen. And it makes you wonder if the local authorities there will make changes because of that. It was her own decision, and it was her own poor choice, and in no way was it the fault of the crew or anybody else but her. And I hate to say it, but that's the case. Even though, and I mentioned this, if you were the crew on that flight, I think it was a Caribbean Airlines flight, it would suck to kind of know that you blew somebody and killed them. If you found out about it, that would suck, even though it's not your fault. But that's still a horrible thought to live with. Definitely
tragic. Definitely a tragic situation there. So anyways, yeah, like we said, we'll send our thoughts and prayers to this person. But I mean, have you guys ever experienced any jet blast before in real life?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just walking behind aircrafts on the ramp, and when they're pulling out or their engines are started, when you're walking behind to get out or walk around them.
It's no joke. I remember when I was working on the ramp, I was driving around and even like a little Embraer 145 drove by, and I was, sorry guys. Anyway, so I was driving by and I almost got blown over there. It's not cool. It's not a good situation. So Anyways,
not something you want to deal with, and it does make you wonder, kind of what her thought process was, and what the thought process of those people that do that. I know plenty of av geeks, even av geeks won't even go out and do that when they go to Maho Beach, because they're so concerned about the jet blast, and they don't want to get hit about it. And I think it's smart. So
no, I mean, I feel like part of it is going to be the people that know about aircraft, people who understand the danger. I mean, they might take a step back and think, what are we really doing here? Whereas, I don't know, someone else who isn't might not do something like that.
Yeah, I think it all has to do with just common sense, I guess, and that's kind of at the core of it. So, I wouldn't do it, just because you do have to have that upper body strength. And I'm not gonna lie, I probably have it, but I'm not gonna sit there and risk that. It's an unnecessary risk. And aircraft are big, bad, mean machines. Well, not bad, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And they will blow you over easily. And as you can see in her case, it was a horrible, horrible, tragic death. Something you don't want to live with. So. No,
I mean, it's a shame it all had to happen this way. I mean, whatever comes from it, whether it's
so I think
more required for. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say I think the real question is how is Maho Beach going to respond to this? What do you think? Do you guys think Maho Beach will shut down?
I don't know. James Dinsdale, one of our writers over in Europe, he's been there before, and he mentioned something about that. He said, "Well, do they think they'll make cosmetic changes?" And it would be hard. I mean, the only solution I can think of is what do you call that?
Like a barrier wall? Like a wall?
Yeah, a wall, but there's a proper name for it. I had it earlier. A blast wall or blast barrier.
Sure.
Blast
yeah.
Fence. Yeah, and those are easy to put up, and those are not too expensive. So I would say that's very likely, putting it up against the fence. I wouldn't be surprised if they put something like that up, and it doesn't obstruct the view for landings.
Definitely, yeah. I would actually prefer that, to be honest. So I think that's a good solution. So,
but
anyway.
I mean, come on, even if they don't put a fence up or a blast fence up, it's still your own personal decision to make that unnecessary risk. It's like jumping off a cliff.
Yeah. So, anyways,
tell you to do it. As the famous quote goes, if your friends jump off a bridge or whatever, should you do it too, or they tell you to? So, it's one of those things.
Definitely. So, but you guys, we've got a lot to talk about tonight in the world of regionals. So regional airlines, for those of you who don't know, they are smaller airlines that usually work in conjunction with United States or even across the world with the larger, what we call mainline carriers. So mainline carriers are the main airline. They run the operation, and they decide they either hire or buy these smaller airlines to fly their shorter routes to them, to bring them into where they're going so that they can send them out to either international cities or farther destinations that these smaller aircrafts can't get to. So in the United States, most of the legacy carriers have a hub and spoke system. So United, Delta, American, the big three, they have a hub and spoke system where they either contract or buy and use wholly owned regional carriers, so these smaller airlines, to operate these smaller feeder routes to bring them into their hubs so that they can go out. And that's the way that the regional airlines work. Also with the ground staff, they're usually ground staff or any employees really of regional airlines are usually paid a little bit less, but they tend to do a little bit more work, to be honest, depending on the station, obviously. I started out as a regional ground handler, and I was loading bags for a regional airline back in 2010 and 11, and I was getting paid minimum wage, and I did everything but fly the plane for the most part. I loaded the bags, checked people in, boarded the flights, laugh dumps. There was like 25 of us maybe on staff at the whole station, and we had 2 gates and like 9 or 10 flights a day. So it's definitely a different experience from the mainline carriers, where you've got relatively highly paid employees and that are working on larger airplanes going to farther routes with more people, obviously. So A lot to talk about there in the regional airline industry. There's been some hiccups in the airline industry, regional airline industry, that is, in the past years or so. It's on the uptick now, but a lot of controversy. Pilots not getting paid anywhere near where most people would say they should be paid. Flight attendants being paid less, just employees in general, and a lot of cost cutting and cutting corners on when it comes to things like pay. So we reached out to one of our friends who's a pilot. His name is Joseph, and he's a first officer at Republic Airlines. Anything he says in this interview does not necessarily represent the views and or opinions of Republic, but he was gracious enough to talk to us, and we're super excited to share this interview with you guys. It includes myself, Ryan, and our co-host Parker, and we got to sit down and ask him a few questions. So we're excited to share this interview with you, and we hope you like it. Here we go. So, Joseph, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, how did you get started in the airline industry, and where did you begin your flying career? Did you start out in the military or civilian? How'd that get going?
Yeah, sure thing. I grew up about 20 minutes away from JFK Airport out in New York, and my dad would always take me out, when I was really young, just to kind of, spend time, and while he was doing bills and stuff like that and paperwork. And from a really young age, I was exposed to the industry. I was always kind of interested and fascinated. I mean, we lived right under the approach path to 31 left at Kennedy, so pretty much my whole life I was interested. And he further sparked that interest by buying me Microsoft Flight Simulator, one of the early versions. And so I have very vivid memories of growing up and figuring out how to, first take off and fly in a virtual world. And ironically, actually, really never actually flew anywhere, as we didn't really take too many vacations or anything. So it was up until I was 16 that I really remembered flying for the first time, and at that point I realized how much I really actually did enjoy it. So at that point I decided, hey, you know what? Maybe I should get a little bit more serious about this and see if I can make it a career. And as I was in high school, I was trying to figure out which schools to go to and how to pursue the career. Ended up down in Jacksonville, Florida, where I attended Jacksonville University, and I got a degree there in aviation management and flight operations. And I did all my flight training at Jacksonville University in partnership with Airlines Flight Academy, where I later was a certified flight instructor. And then for the last year, I was working at a 135 operator, Schedule 135 and charter operator up in the Northeast called Tradewind Aviation. And it's been a great road so far. Now I'm at Republic flying the Embraer 175, and it's a great airplane. The company's treated me really well, and I'm pretty much loving every second of it.
That's awesome. So did you always dream of the path that you've taken? I mean, did you want to go to a regional? Is your goal to get to a mainline carrier someday? I mean, where are you at today?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of funny. I mean, for I would say 90% of the public doesn't even really know that the regionals exist, and I was one of those people that didn't know about them up until I started to get serious about the industry. And so, honestly, I never really. Not only did I not know that they existed, but if I don't know that they exist, I can't really aspire to work for a regional. But I understand it's a necessary stepping stone and a necessary and very vital part of the business that these carriers provide. And so when it came to time to choose a regional, there were a lot of factors involved. But this is the path that I kind of envisioned as I got further and further along in my studies and college education, and I wanted to make sure I picked a regional that would provide me several things. First and foremost was job security. I didn't go somewhere that I'd be wondering if I'm going to lose my job in the next year or two or whatever. So yeah, that's pretty much all turned out as best as I could imagine. There were a few unforeseen circumstances along the way that were out of my control and out of a lot of people's control. But so far it's been great.
So how long have you been working for the current airline that you're at?
Yeah, I started with Republic actually not too long ago in November of 2016. So just still under a year actually. But yeah, it's been great.
That's awesome. So I guess the real question is have you seen any of the challenges that regional airlines have gone through? Especially since, in a post 9/11 world, you look at the regional airline structure and you've noticed that, even though you may have not worked for them, you probably noticed that the structure of these regional airlines has changed immensely. So back, around 9/11 or even before 9/11, there was an abundance of these regional carriers, and they were extremely successful, and they really helped the whole hub and spoke network that the legacy U.S. carriers love to use, such as American, Delta, and United, to feed into their hubs so that they can go on to other places. But as the time went along and as these airlines started consolidating and going into bankruptcy and things like that, you noticed that a lot of these regional airlines were taking some of the big hits. And now we're at where we are today, where there are pilot shortages and pay discrepancies and things like that. So my question is even though you've only been there for a relatively short amount of time, how do you feel about the challenges that the regional airlines have, gone through, and does it affect you as an employee of one?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, the bottom line is the regional airlines, they don't sell their own tickets. So 100% of their business is pleasing their own customer. And their own customer, just like you said, is the mainline carriers that provide them with the business. So we have a very important job, and that's to please our mainline partners. And Republic, we fly for, all three legacies, American, United, and Delta. And they're constantly tracking everything we do. And, in terms of fuel usage, on-time performance, cancellation factor, like all those things are metrics, just a few metrics actually that go into determining how much the company's going to get paid for the service that we provide, and then in turn, how much business we're going to get. So it's a very interesting, business plan that a company like Republic or another regional like for example SkyWest or Mesa Airlines, specifically the ones that aren't wholly owned carriers, because when you start talking about regionals, you have the contract carriers that are not owned by any legacy airlines, but then you also have now, especially post bankruptcies and post mergers, these airlines that are actually wholly owned, by these legacy carriers. And so I think the business models are even a little bit different between those two. You can make a distinction between the wholly owned carriers and the contract carriers, but there are several challenges. And number one is trying to keep the costs down so that you can actually make a profit for your own company, because all of your services are provided at a fixed rate. It's not like you can really haggle too much on the ticket price, because American or Delta or United, they're going to charge their own customers a certain fee for flying on their aircraft, and then of course we're kind of the middleman. We're going to get the leftovers, and then of course there's stockholders and shareholders that need to get their piece of the pie too. So there are definitely a lot of challenges. As an employee, I think part of the challenge is realizing that it's an interesting part that we play in the business. And I fly a 76-seater aircraft right now, and sometimes a 69-seat, depending on the 170 or 175 model. But you backtrack 20 or 30 years, and a regional airline was flying a 19-seat commuter, turboprop, not a 76-seater jet. So it's a much different comparison in terms of what's expected with the job. And when you really start to compare what's happening, I mean, we're really basically doing the same job that the mainline carriers were doing 40 years ago, but for a lot less of the pie, because we're the middleman. So
that's definitely.
So part of that
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's definitely true. I mean, you take a look at some of these routes that your aircraft specifically are flying for a lot of these mainline carriers. I mean, we've got a lot of, like, even Dallas-Fort Worth to Canada, for example. A lot of these, 175s are taken over and things like that. And it's really amazing to see. But one of the things that I wanted to touch on was the buzzword that is pilot shortage. So we take a look at everything that's going on with the pilot industry and being an aircraft or an airline pilot, and this pilot shortage. First of all, as an employee perspective and as a pilot yourself, I mean, do you really see this happening? And B, is it really secluded to the regional airline industry like the media and or some of the airlines like to portray it to be?
Well, I think the way you can look at it is, when you take a look at the applications that are on file for American, United, Delta, and even some could argue JetBlue or Spirit, which are in kind of like a different tier, they are experiencing, some sort of finally some sort of point where they are having to hire people at a normal rate. I wouldn't call it anywhere close to a shortage. But when you get to the regional level, it's a little bit different, and that's because for the last decade plus, they really haven't done their part to try to make the job attractive. I mean, and it's I'm grateful to be a part of the industry now where people fought very hard to get the contracts and the pay rates to almost an affordable level now. I mean, for so many years, people were working for pennies under the idea that they could land their dream job, and concessionary contracts and all these things post bankruptcy. There was a lot of hard work and I'd say compromise that had to be made. And some of these people were able to go on and make a lot of money at mainline carriers, but just in the last few months that I've spent at Republic, I've flown with 40 or 50 different captains with 10 years of experience as a captain and doing pretty much the exact same job, but making a fraction of what they would be making at mainline. And it's an interesting thing. So the pilot shortage, to answer the question, I do think it is existing at the regional level, but it's a problem that these airlines have kind of caused for themselves. And it's almost hard to blame the regionals entirely because, again, they are in it to make a profit, and they do need to show that they are a profitable business. And what it really comes down to is how the mainline carriers, I think, have distributed the funds, and it's definitely not on equal terms.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I would just looking at it in general, I would say that. Well, first of all, I would just like to say that there's been leaps and bounds, just even within the past 5 years.
100%.
To make the regional airlines a lot more attractive for pilots.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sign-on bonuses and pay increases and things like that, and of course, wholly owned carriers help as well. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, especially being so immersed in that industry. But we wanted to open up the floor, obviously, and see if any of our other hosts, Ryan or Parker, to see if they had any questions for you here. Ryan, did you have any?
I just wanted to ask the question. I think this presses a lot of aviation enthusiasts, including myself. Is there an exterior difference between the 170 and the 175? That is something like a secret.
I wish I had a better answer for you because I pre-flight the plane pretty much every time I go and fly it. And, if I didn't know the placard on the inside, I have a way to tell. So, I mean, there might be a few windows that you could count with a really keen eye, but I haven't found a really good way to tell the difference between the two just at a quick glance, honestly.
Right. Yes. Another question for you. Obviously, I think Republic's included in this. Republic operates smaller regional aircraft besides the 175 and 170. Am I correct?
They actually do. Republic used to operate. They've operated a bunch of different airplanes over the last decade or so under various contracts and carrier certificates. But as of this moment, Republic is 100% an Embraer 170, 175 fleet.
Well, I can still ask the question, I guess, then. My question is, is there a difference between flying like a 145 versus a 175? Do you need a different type rating or something, or are they the same flight type?
Yeah, they actually are a different type rating, a much different flight deck. The Embraer 175 was, of course, developed from the 145 family. I don't have a type rating in the 145, so I can't speak for that aircraft type family. But I actually, when I was starting with Republic, I was required to get my ATP CTP, which is the Airline Transport Pilot certification program, basically to get the multi-engine requirement accomplished per the new FAA regulations. So part of that was I had to get a certain amount of simulator training in an aircraft that met certain gross weight requirements. So the way Republic handled that was they, of course, paid for the course, which definitely wouldn't have happened 10 years ago as per our last conversation, but they did pay for the course, and the aircraft that they used was the 145 because they were just starting to offload all of their aircraft. So those simulators, they had thousands of hours of block time accumulated that were kind of left over, that they weren't now using for recurrent training and new hire training and whatsoever. So I did get to fly about it was about 15 hours in the 145, and then going to the 175 after that, of course, for my actual initial training for the airline. There were definitely a lot of improvements made with the 175 family, and Embraer definitely did a great job in trying to make it as user-friendly as possible, because pilots aren't always the brightest bulbs in the bunch.
That's have you Tyler finds it funny because he's a flight attendant. So do you guys, what's your favorite airport to fly into and why?
My favorite airport to fly into? Well, it's kind of a biased question because, like I was saying, I grew up near Kennedy, and so anytime I get to go into JFK, there's a special place in my heart. I think fondly of my memories as a kid and growing up and flying over basically the areas that I grew up in. So I really, really do enjoy that. Other than that, it's a close second. It's LaGuardia, and pretty much for the same reason. I do a lot more flying in LaGuardia. We don't have a base in Kennedy anymore. Back when we had the 145, that was a pilot domicile, but now it's only LaGuardia and Newark in the New York area. So I really do enjoy flying into New York airspace in general, just because you really have to be on top of your game. I mean, there's really no room for error, which is of course the case everywhere else in the country as well. But things happen quickly on the radio. The controllers do an amazing job in the New York area. They expect you to be on top of your game. And I love the challenge that brings. Gladly we don't have to deal with terrain like you might have to in SoCal and on the West Coast. But there are a lot of airplanes in a very, very small space, and I love the rush.
Have you done the Canarsie? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but the approach that's really tight.
Yeah, the Canarsie 13 left into Kennedy. I actually have not done that yet. It's on my bucket list. Just because I don't do as much Kennedy flying as I'd prefer. Hopefully that changes. As the regional whipsaw continues, they always change around the routes, etc. But the LaGuardia Expressway Visual 3-1 is one of my favorites.
Excellent.
And yeah, it's really, really, it's not only a great view of New York off to the left, but it's really fun to fly too.
Awesome. Have you gotten your shot with the DCA River Visual yet?
Yeah, several times. In fact, we operate the shuttle for Delta and American between LaGuardia and DC. Pretty much on the hour, and so there's lots and lots of trips that involve the two airports. So often we get to go between both airports on the same trip, and it's a lot of fun. The river visual is great too, especially at night. It's incredibly beautiful.
Awesome. That's awesome, man. Tyler, Parker, anything from you guys?
Yeah, actually. So, I was just curious as to how a trip for you, being a first officer at a regional airline, it might differ from that of a first officer at a mainline carrier. If it does at all.
That's
to
a
the
great
best
question.
of your knowledge.
Yeah, sure. So actually, a little bit more to my story. Right now, I reside in Jacksonville, Florida, just because it's a whole heck of a lot cheaper than the New York area. But of course, LaGuardia is actually still my base, so I commute between New York and LaGuardia. New York and Jacksonville. So actually today I was just finishing up a 4-day trip out of Philadelphia, which I picked up just because it was a little bit more commutable. Long story short, I was able to get on a Delta mainline aircraft from Philadelphia to Atlanta, and I was sitting in the cockpit jump seat just because the rest of the flight was full. So I was discussing our trips a little bit, and it seemed like, this was an MD-88 at, the Mad Dog, and they do a lot of similar flying that we do. And so their 4-day trip was very, very similar to, 4-day trip at Republic, for example. 3 or 4 legs per day, around 5 or 6 hours of flight time, and it may or may not be commutable on either end of the trip, meaning you might have to go in a day earlier because you have a really early show time, or you might have to go home a day late because you have a really late finishing time. So, so in that regard, in that airplane, on those trips specifically, they were very similar. Now, of course, if you compare my schedule to that of, let's say, an Airbus 330 out of Atlanta or something like that, or Philly, for American, they're going to be completely different because now you start factoring in an augmented crew where you have more than 2 pilots required for the trip, and now you're changing theaters, so you're going to need more, hours of rest. It'll get completely different. So it really depends on the equipment that you're flying and the type of trip that it is, if that somewhat answers your question.
No, yeah, for sure. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joseph. So that was awesome, man. That was really good details there. But last question I want to ask, and this goes out to everybody, for those that want to join the airline industry, and obviously don't go the military route. Obviously, the regional flying is the best, or that whole JetBlue thing. But what is your best advice to people who want to join the U.S. airline industry as a pilot, and obviously have to start on the regional side?
Now, the best advice I could give is you have to do what works for you. There are a lot of different avenues that can get you to not only a good regional job, but also a great mainline job. And that could be, I went to college because I thought that was the only way I could get an airline job. Where I was from in my town in New York, I was the only kid interested in flying. I was the only nerd who would look up and, tell you what airline it was and what kind of plane it was. So I didn't really have a lot of guidance, and this was kind of before Twitter became as popular as it is, and the internet became as valuable of a resource. So it was a little bit challenging trying to figure out the information. So I just went to college and kind of hoped for the best. And it did work out. I didn't necessarily take the most direct route in terms of getting into the airline industry, but so far it's worked out in my favor. So like I was saying, you have to do what works for you. And that might be different. For me, it meant leaving my hometown and kind of exploring a bit and coming down to Florida. And now I have a whole another group of friends and family, really, that I have here that allowed me to pursue my career as well and get some great flying experience. But the number one thing is to find a structured program. I was an instructor at a Part 141 program, which is more of a structured environment. And I was also an instructor at a Part 61 program where it's more kind of like a mom and pop laid back. And, if you're a really motivated student, it doesn't really matter where you're going. You're going to thrive either way. You'll find the best instructor available and try to get the most out of it. But if you have the structure there and other students who are also as motivated as you are, or at least have similar goals, you can feed off of each other. So, my college experience, the best part about it is, was meeting people that had similar goals that I did, and now we're all thriving in the industry together, and we can talk about our experiences and learn from each other. So for some that may be going to college, and for others that may be going to a private aviation academy such as Airsim Flight Academy down in Sanford, Florida, or all ATP. They're all over the country. Those are options where you can fly. Now, people have mixed results with that. Some people go in and they can finish all their ratings really quickly, and other people don't have a good experience and they might, need a little bit more time, or they might have a bad instructor. But, if you're really passionate about it and trying to get your foot in the door and in the industry, don't let a bad instructor get you down. I mean, one of my first instructors, he was brand new and he was a great guy, but we kind of butted heads a little bit in the beginning, and I was very, very discouraged because this was something I wanted to do my whole life, and I wasn't doing as well as I wanted to do, and I was, just sitting there like, man, what am I doing wrong? And I'm studying really hard. It wasn't working out, and I kind of needed to just take a step back, and I kept trying and kept going, and eventually it kind of worked out, and I was able to see some success. So just keep your eye on the prize. I mean, it's kind of hard to believe for me that I'm in the position that I am now, at this job and progressing in the career that I want to be in. And it's totally worth it. I mean, if you really want to do it, then don't give up.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, guys, thank you for coming. You can follow Joseph and his flying adventures at String and Rudder on Twitter, and he's got some good stuff up there, so definitely keep him in mind. But thanks, Joseph, for coming and telling us all about your regional flying experience.
Yeah, thank you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to my story. And String and Rudder, actually, on my handle on Twitter and also Instagram, it has a little bit of backstory too. I also I've been playing violin for 15 years. I'm a musician, and so that's where the string part comes in. And when I was actually, I was getting my CFI, my flight instructor rating, I was reading a book called Stick and Rudder, which has kind of been passed down to pilots. It's a really, really old book, and I figured, hey, you know what? Let me combine the two things I really love. So
That's awesome.
that's kind of the background behind that. But thank you very much. You guys are great, and I appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Joseph. Happy flying.
What a great interview that was. Joseph, man, if you're listening, thank you so much for tuning in or for doing this interview with us. It was fantastic. We really appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, that was awesome. It was a great interview. And it really was enjoyable to talk to him about regional flying, and kind of gets a bad rap. And I think it was really good to hear firsthand from a pilot, especially one that is based up in New York and really gets the full experience. So
definitely.
Thank you again.
Yeah, let's give it up for Joseph. All right.
Our studio audience tonight is really riled up.
They're going crazy. Anyways, hey, you guys, we got some amazing things coming up in the airlinegeeks.com world, including Aviation Day 2017. Mr. Ryan, do you want to give us a little rundown about what Aviation Day is, what's going on? What's the story?
Sure. So August 18th is National, well, not really. August 18th is the eve of National Aviation Day. So definitely a fun day. We're going to have 169 participants coming down to 15 different locations, American Airlines locations, to check out inside the world's biggest airline. How cool is that? So definitely follow along on August 18th, a month from Tuesday, on Twitter and all our social media platforms by using the hashtag Aviation Day. We have a lot of fun stuff planned along with American, and a lot of it is yet to be announced, and a lot of fun surprises along the way too. So if you're going, congrats, and you will definitely be able to pop up, and I think you'll be surprised with some of the stuff we put together. So
definitely. And along with Aviation Day, there's some other awesome aviation events going on this summer. Of course, the Mecca for all things aviation, Oshkosh, the Air Venture Show up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, brought on by EAA. That's going on at the end of this month. And if you're going to make it up there, that'll be fantastic. A lot of things going on with that. But we definitely wanted to plug Aviation Day because it's going to be a great day. You guys had a blast last year, from what I hear, of course. And the fact that American Airlines is on board with this is just fantastic. So if you definitely want to hear more about Aviation Day, you can tune in once again to airlinegeeks.com and all of the social media platforms for that.
Yes, sir.
That'll be great. And you know what, guys? I think that's it. I think that's it for our show today. If you're just listening, if this is your first time tuning in, this is Inside the Airlines podcast. Once again, my name is Tyler. I'm with Parker and Ryan, and we are your host. You can check us out. We are on iTunes. We have an RSS feed if you'd like to use other podcast players. You can check us out on YouTube as well. All of our episodes are up on YouTube under Inside the Airlines. Find us on Twitter at Airline Podcast. And of course, everything that you hear today is brought to you by AirlineGeeks.com. Thank you so much, everybody, seriously, for tuning in here on Facebook. This is a new thing we're trying out, and we think we like it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think it's gone well.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
Yeah. Definitely brings it straight to the people.
I would definitely agree with that. But thank you guys once again for tuning in. We're glad you're here. You can catch us next time. We'll be up on iTunes in maybe in a day or two. So be on the lookout for that. That's it, everybody. Have a great night. Go watch Game of Thrones if you recorded it, and enjoy your time. Have a aviation fun-filled day. See ya.
Happy flying.
See you next week.